Hey, welcome back to the channel, my fellow weather junkies. I'm your host, meteorologist Greg Majeski, your trusted weather source here, bringing you the weather without all that social media hype here on your St. Patrick's Day, March 17th, 2025. Now, before we get rolling in this updated report, I first want to say thank you to all our new subscribers here on the channel that found us over the weekend. And if you haven't yet subscribed just yet, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button in that lower right-hand corner. It'd be an honor and a privilege to welcome you aboard here with the Weather Nerds family. Now, of course, the big news story over the weekend was the really big kickoff for the severe weather season as we had numerous tornadoes, for almost 90 of them across the country, and left a path of destruction. And of course, we had a number of deaths as well. So we do want to extend our sincerest, heartfelt condolences to the families that were impacted over the weekend. Now, of course, the big question on everybody's minds is, when is the next one going to happen? Well, we're going to get into that on this report, but first, we're going to kick things off by looking at the current conditions. All right, kicking things off, looking at the big picture from coast to coast here on the satellite imagery. We got one storm system here on the east coast starting to move on off. You're seeing some of the thunderstorms off the North Carolina coast there. A little disturbance here across the northern plains. Some energy out here in the Intermountain region being fed by this low pressure here off the Northern California coast, seeing the swath of moisture coming in across Southern California and going into the interior sections there. So as we look at the current picture here with our current map, again, saying goodbye to that storm system. It's getting on out of here finally. Definitely cooler here across the east. And then we're going to have to watch this system here in Northern California as this begins to swing inland and heads in toward the interior. It could potentially set out some active weather once again as we head toward the middle of the week. The question is, will it be anywhere near as bad as what we just had over the weekend? With that said, let's go ahead and see what the Storms Prediction Center is showing for the moment. So let us begin by looking at that day one outlook from the Storm Prediction Center as we're looking at just a general thunderstorm threat here in the west, portions of Oregon, Idaho, into California, Nevada, Utah, seeing that, even a little bit up here in Washington State. And there's a little sliver here across the Carolina coast, although I think a lot of that's moved on out to sea right now. So not looking too bad there. Things get to get a little more interesting going into day two. Some of its initial energy starts to progress inland. And you're seeing a marginal risk for severe weather there across portions of Nebraska and into Iowa. But it's the day three that of course, has my interest here as that storm system really gets kind of cranking a little bit as we're seeing just a marginal risk here from Iowa stretching all the way down to the southeast. So this is not looking too bad, although I do suspect this may get upgraded to at least a slight risk, if not by later today, going into tomorrow. And I'll break that down here on why in just a second. The other part of this storm system that we really need to pay attention to is what it does as it pulls into the interior here going into tomorrow and into Wednesday. Notice we've got a lot of hazards showing a lot of high winds out here. And you notice this dark section in here. This is that wildfire risk. Again, we had that with the last one, and it's been kind of dry down in this portion of the country here for a lot of the winter. So the wildfire threat is going to be up once again for this region as that energy begins to evade out of the Rockies and pull into the plains once again. So let's go ahead and break down the latest model data and track this storm system here for this upcoming week. All right, we're going to first start off by taking a look at the 500 millibar level as far as the winds. We're going to just kind of track these storm systems here across the country. Obviously, we've got this nice big dip in the jet stream here showing the cooler air across the east. We're going to be tracking this energy here off the west coast as this thing swings inland. It's going to be our player. In fact, what it's going to do, it's going to bring in not only that risk for severe weather, but on the last day of winter, probably a pretty decent snowstorm, probably the biggest in an area that hasn't seen a whole lot of snow this year. We're going to show you that here in a second. But again, watch as this progresses. So we watch that system swing into the southwest. Again, as this wind energy kind of gets into this portion of the country, we'll have to watch for that fire danger once again as it swings on out. Now, this looks very similar to the last one, but it's lacking a couple of things. One, looks like we're going to be lacking a little bit of moisture with this and definitely not seeing as much of the instability of the heat with this particular system because of the cool down and as how quickly it's kind of arriving on the heels of the exiting storm system there. So we're going to watch this closely as we get some weather in here. We could get some, again, severe weather here, and there'll be some decent snows on the backside of this low pressure system as this thing gets cranking. Now, as this thing begins to move on off and begins to exit, so we got this one trough, and it looks like after this, we just got some minor storm systems. We got another one here. We'll watch here across the southeast. I'll swing on through. Got this thing really wound up pretty good there over the Great Lakes as it swings up toward the north there as we go toward this upcoming weekend on the 22nd. Now, as we progress this on through here, beyond the next 7 days, we got a pretty good trough here coming here across the east. So we'll see another cool down here and a bit ridging here out in the west, so a little bit milder out there. And then as we go into next week, and this is kind of an extrapolation once you get beyond about 7 days, obviously. So we're continuing with that cooler trend. Here's another cool shot here across the east. Once again, here's another storm system here out in the west. And this one here in the west may bury itself down here across the west. So we have to watch this closely. So watch what happens to this thing. A huge, gigantic cutoff low here forms here across Baja California. And these have to be watched closely because they're kind of unpredictable with their movements and stuff. And if this thing swings back into Texas, they can really kind of also augment and set off some additional severe weather. But for the most part, you notice as we go toward the last day of March and going into April, a fairly zonal pattern here across the country is emerging. So that means relatively calm at this point. So let's go ahead and look at the short-term forecast. We're going to look at the high-resolution model data here as we kind of track this through again. Again, we're watching the snows here across the west, kind of moving in. So we'll have some decent mountain snows here throughout the day here on your Monday afternoon, and some rains here across California. And this will progress inland here as we continue to watch it move inland. And as we go through the day on going into Tuesday, it's not looking bad. We'll see the snows there picking up across Utah and areas there of the Intermountain region of Montana and into Wyoming. So look at some decent snows there. But this thing begins to emerge out into the plains. And, areas of the plains haven't really seen that much snow there. But this is going to be a pretty good snow dump here coming into across Nebraska and then coming into Iowa. The Europeans showing some pretty good snow totals there. And we'll show you that here in a second. But, again, this is a part of the country that has not seen a ton of snow this winter. All right, so let's go ahead and continue to take this forward. Again, this is on the same time frame here. So we're looking at about 2 o'clock in the morning on Wednesday. This is a pretty decent low here, folks. This is a 988 low. Again, not as bad as like the 975, but 988 is nothing to sneeze at. We're definitely going to see some snows on the backside of this thing, and then we're going to watch to see if we get any kind of thunderstorms here to flare up. Again, we got some pretty good wind energy with this, and you can still fire up some severe weather despite lacking some instability. Got some pretty good dynamics with this. So again, we're going to watch very closely to see if we get any kind of severe weather with this, and I got a very decent snowstorm on the backside of this going through Iowa, parts of Minnesota, and into Wisconsin as this thing begins to get cranked up a little bit. 987 millibars on that low, and then it kind of tracks up into the north there. So kind of swinging that snows across the south, and you see the blue freezing line. This is our colder air kind of coming here across the eastern half of the United States. So again, this will be something that'll be a nice thing to kind of wrap up the last day of winter with a pretty good snowstorm there. And as we can progress, obviously, the first day of spring coming in here on the 20th, I think about 5 in the morning there on Eastern Daylight Time. Looks like we're in store for a fairly quiet start to this weekend. Weekend's not looking too bad here across the nation. Got a weak little system here going into your Saturday here across portions of the Mid-South. Definitely a little cooler here across the Great Lakes with a cold shot there coming there, and some snows in the Intermountain region. But not looking too bad here as we go on out to the end of this run here on the 60. And we'll go ahead and take this on out to beyond that here, going on out here. We got another system here going into next week. Looks fairly weak, nothing to write home about, but we do have a cold shot there. Little snows there across areas of New England going into going into the 25th. So going into the last week of March there with little snows there across that region. Again, we got a couple of those cold shots coming down at us here. And then kind of continue with the trophiness here going into the 28th. So it looks like we're progressing toward a cooler end of the month of March here across the east and a little bit milder out in the west. And then we'll watch that big upper level low kind of swung up there. You see it showing up very nicely right here with the cold air kind of cutting off there with the cold upper level low. And we'll see if that has any kind of impact on the weather as we wrap up the month of March and go into April. Again, those upper level lows, they get cut off like that. They can be a little bit unpredictable, but you see that one right there. And we got another decent storm system coming in here on the west coast. So looks like this storm system we have toward the middle of the week appears to be the strongest of what we're seeing here over the next couple of weeks. All right, let's go ahead and talk about the severe weather portal to this now. This is the K index. This is kind of a snapshot of the potential thunderstorms. We're focusing here on Wednesday. So again, not looking bad. I got some thunderstorms here across portions of Mississippi all the way up into Illinois. And it's this southern part of this that's going to have to be watched closely to see if that's going to potentially become severe. Maybe some isolated tornadoes. Again, nothing on the outbreak we just had over the weekend, but it's definitely in the cards. And if the instability is there just a little bit more, and again, we can get severe weather with the dynamics, and the dynamics, as we showed you with the wind energy, is pretty good. So we're going to have to watch that closely. I'm going to kind of back this up for you. You kind of see as this thing emerges out in the plains, out of the plains and into the east, out of the Midwest and into the southeast. We'll watch that as we got a line of showers and thunderstorms here going into late in the day on Wednesday. So Wednesday will have to be watched closely for the potential for some active severe weather. And then this kind of weekends after that kind of pushes on out to sea. So Wednesday, that's going to be our watch day here for this upcoming week. Let's go ahead and talk about the rainfall totals that's going out for the next 10 days. The heaviest rain totals are out here in the Pacific Northwest. This will be in the form of snow. I'll show you the snow totals here in a little bit, and also have some snows and some rains here as well. But generally not looking at a lot of heavy precipitation here over the next 10 days, except for areas there in the Pacific Northwest. So again, not overly strong storm systems to give us the real robust rainfall. So we're not looking at any kind of flooding risk like for this week, for example, looking pretty quiet here for the most part. But that snow part, again, last day of winter. Last day of winter. Well, you know, the last day of winter. Winter's going out on a little bit of a brouhaha here. Check that out here as we're looking at the last day of winter on the 19th. We got a snowstorm, and we got a pretty good path of snow here coming from areas of the UP of Michigan, coming back into areas of Kansas right through here. And this darker green, basically about 6 to 8 inches of snow in here. That's not bad, right through that path right there. So on the last day of winter, we're going to get a nice little snowstorm, and maybe not quite blizzard conditions, but it's a pretty intense low. It'll be some blowing snow around with this. I don't think it'll be quite blizzard condition, but definitely going to be a very strong little system as that kind of comes on in here. And as far as the continent of the United States is concerned, you kind of see the snow there across the west. We're obviously going to pile up some snow there across the Intermountain region and across the Sierra Nevada. And we'll go ahead and take this on out for the next 10 days here. Let me switch this over here to the 0Z. Here we go. And we take this all the way out. And you kind of see there, we got another snow shot here going into the first week of spring showing up across areas of the Northeast. Of course, the Northeast have had a very, very snowy winter, to say the least right now. And they're not done just yet. We may get another snowstorm there. Looks like right going until the 24th and 25th. So it's still, you know, we're 9-10 days out. We'll see. That's probably going to change a little bit. We'll see how that works out. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the clash of air masses. I'm going ahead and gone to the 850 millibar, 5,000 feet to kind of watch the change of the air masses. As we get kind of into the spring, it's just an easier tool to kind of see where the colder and the warmer air is kind of clashing a bit. Obviously, we've got the cool down here in the east in the aftermath of the weekend storm. Here's the warm up here, and then you're going to watch as these systems play bumper cars with each other. So we're going to watch for this one here for this Wednesday. Look at this thing kind of swing on out. Boy, you can see the forcing mechanism there with the cold front. There's our low pressure system. We got the cold air coming here, warm air out ahead of it. So relatively warm. It's not overly warm, that's for sure. As again, we already had the cold shot. It's just not going to get a quick rebound in those temperatures that bad. So this pushes off toward the east air. As you see that kind of plowing into the southeast. We're going to watch that Wednesday and Thursday. Wednesday especially for that severe weather. And this pushes off to the east. So we got a nice cool down here in the east. We got a big area of high pressure here showing up here across the south with that cold air here across the east. Now, these systems this time of year, they're hit and run, man. They like to hit, they move in, they move on out. So we got another little pop. Here comes another one. Look at this little pocket of cold air here across Canada. That's going to dive in across the east here going in toward this upcoming weekend. So we're talking about the 21st into the 22nd. This thing dives on down the south. We get to cool down across the south and the eastern third of the United States going into this upcoming weekend, into Saturday and Sunday. And, of course, it quickly moves on out. We got a little one behind that one going into the Monday and Tuesday. Look at the warm-up here in the west. Big warm-up here in the west going into the early portion of next week, going in toward the 25th. A nice big rebound out there. And then as we continue to the end of this, this is when we watch for that big cutoff low here to kind of form here across the south. Oh, there it is right there. You'll see that big cutoff feature. You'll see the below normal temperatures here at 850. Very, very much milder here across the big portion of the country here as we go to the 30th and into the last day of March. See this going into the last day of March. It looks like a lot of the country here as we wrap up the month of March is looking pretty mild. Obviously, we've got to watch this cutoff feature here to see if it plays any factor in our weather as we go into the month of April. Of course, like I said, those upper level systems, they are a pain to track. So let's go ahead and wrap this thing up and look at our climate outlook here as we're looking at, again, fairly warm pockets here across the country. This is going from the 22nd to the 26th. Obviously, we do have some intermittent cold shots in here. This may be modified just a little bit later today from the Climate Prediction Center as we wrap up the month of March. Going into the last day of March, almost out to the 30th. Again, we got a little cool down here, much milder here in the west. We definitely saw that on the cards here as we look at the extended outlook. And again, we just got a couple of little quick cold shots between some warm shots. So that's why it's like near normal. Kind of averages out a little bit. All right, here goes the precipitation outlook. Active here in the east, dry here in the west. That's for sure, and a little more active there in the Pacific Northwest. Those rainfall totals we showed you up there were looking pretty decent. And going further out into the 24th to the 30th, a bigger swath below normal precipitation, kind of indicative. Remember, we were showing a little bit of a zonal flow starting to take up in here as we headed out toward the end of the month. So that kind of makes sense that we would see drier conditions here as well. So it looks like we got to watch what's going on for this upcoming week. We got a pretty decent snowstorm on the last day of winter to watch. We've got potential for another round of severe weather, but again, nothing like the monster event we had over the weekend. But we are heading into that time of season where folks need to stay situationally aware of what's going on in the weather arena. And of course, I would love to be one of your weather sources to kind of bring you the straight and eddy here on these storms without being the super hype machine and not treating every one of them like the event we just had over the weekend. That was definitely a very strong one, that's for sure. It was pretty easy to track that one. This one up here, like the moderate risk of zone here as far as what I'm thinking as far as its severity. I don't think it's going to be too big a deal, but something to watch, especially there across the middle of the country. All right, that's y'all's update for now. You guys take it easy, be good, stay safe, and we'll see you on the next update. Till then, y'all be good out there, my friends. We'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.